for obliging our request to have a little chat with you, but of course, a detailed one, get towards women empowerment and more participation of women in politics in the Nigerian context. So very quickly, ma, my name is Toyin Ajolori. May I meet you, ma?
Nice meeting you too, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, very quickly, let me ask you, what are your impressions so far about the election?
Well, I thank you for having me, and I must also take this opportunity to thank the International Republican Institute and the National Democratic Institute for having me on board the leadership level to observe the elections. As we say, they have been here for 9 years, supporting the democratization process of Nigeria, and they are your partners, they are Nigerian partners, and they will continue to be here, not only for these elections, perhaps for the gubernatorial elections and also for the future. So that's the opportunity that I'm seizing, and my impression is that things are just as the NDI and IRR have said. We congratulate the Nigerian people for their resilience and determination to franchise their rights by voting in the everywhere across the country. So, for as a woman, I'm happy to be on the panel, the NDI and IRR panel, leadership panel, and to observe that women are doing well, are doing pretty well. Despite the cultural barriers, which is the African cultural barriers that inhibit their participation not only in politics but in all power structures. We have today NDI and IRR have made sound recommendations, which we hopefully think the government of Nigeria will consider.
Great. I know the IRI and the NDI are very good promoters of women participation in politics. Now, considering what has transpired these few days, would you say women participation is on the rise in Nigeria?
I wouldn't say it is on the rise. If you statistically, women in Nigeria constitute 51 to 52% of the general population of 200 and something million people. And if you look at their contribution to the political process in terms of elections, they are the majority of the electorate, and they are the caregivers of the communities, they are the mothers of the young people, and they are contributors to peace because they bear the brunt of conflicts. So we feel that there is need to work harder for women to rise. You look at Rwanda, it's about 64%. And when we are calling on government, recommending to government to support the empowerment of women, we have to contextualize it in the framework, the human rights framework. Universally, Declaration of Human Rights, 1979, calls for equal rights, gender rights, equal participation of women and men and young people, and also the vulnerable groups, internally displaced people, also the IDPs. And if you look at the CEDAW Convention on All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, CEDAW, which was also adopted in 1979, including Nigeria is a signatory. You have the Maputo Protocol, you have other subsequent protocols on the human rights of women and children. You find that it is important that they comply with these protocols so that women can have at least some quota system, both at the level of the constitution, the level of the electoral reforms, and then all sectors of society. Cultural system in terms of cultural laws and norms um, inhibit the participation of women because, for instance, like in the religious communities, they say that perhaps like the Holy Quran says that women must be submissive, which is not right. In the 14 chapters of the Holy Quran, God talks about the equality. And there is a specific verse of the Holy Quran, chapter 33, which is Surah An-Nisa, which calls for the empowerment of both men and women. But this is confined on women, the rights of women. If you go to Surah Maryam also, this is a verse that is given to Maryam alayhi salam, the mother of Jesus alayhi salam. So we have in the Holy Quran, in the Bible, because the cultural norms are usually the misinterpretation of our holy books. So we need to fundamentally help bring on board our religious leaders to educate and to inform our societies that there is no religious book that says that women must not be empowered. If you look at society, you look at the starting of the religion, it's the women. Women fought the religious wars. Women were there to fight in the wars, in conflicts. They bear the burden front of everything. So you bring it into the governance structure, in the conventional governance, you find that we are confined and we must be directed or guided by the instruments that our government sign by providing education, because this is fundamentally something that is inhibiting women's empowerment. The percentage, the overall women and young girls, um, if it is resources, they spend it on boys, on sons, and rather daughters. So it's important that you empower the woman so that she can be contributing much towards the education of children. The literacy rate is a strategy. You have to include more girls, enrollment rate, and not only startup, like but retention to the university level. I'm an example, a living example. I was married at the age of 16. I got 4 children. I went back to school, and then I got another 4 children. I have eight children, 4 boys and 4 girls.
Don't look it.
But because my mother made sure that I pursued my education with her support, I am able to be who I am today, championing the cause of women. So it's important. They need to also provide budgets and resources for the empowerment of women. Well, how do they do that? In the national budget, they must give some allocation to women's institutions, civil society organizations, and they must also look at the gender-based violence, particularly within the electoral process, and see how they can. Women are really working hard. Here we have found women in the Situation Room, that is the Women Trust Fund. We have found women in the civil society like Yaga. You find that on the board you have that Madam Alima. What's her name? Is it Alima? She's on the board. So we must try to include them in boards, in committees, and women must also be realized that they have the talent, equal talent and ingenuity as men, and they must really have support for each other. The solidarity, unity of purpose of women would carry us a way long, move our agenda. And we also have to have partnerships. We must have the political engagement, political commitment of our countries, including Nigeria, so that they ensure that women are in the forefront, or at least at the equal level of governance, social development, and economic development. If you look at the social development agenda, social development goals, number 3 is gender equality and the empowerment of women. These are responsibilities that our government should take in partnership, in concert with international partners. Most of the partners are here, like NDI and IRR, are here to support that process. making observations, independent, neutral observations, to see where the gaps are. And as I say, no system is perfect in Europe, in the Western world, and everything. But we find that we have to try. Women have to try for themselves. Poverty is also what is really bringing women back. Women, particularly in the rural areas, we have to focus on empowering women in the rural areas. They are the producers and the reproducers of goods and services. They are the mothers who work from day to dawn on the farms. We have to support them in investing on the empowerment of women. By and large, these are few things, and we do hope that this is something that not only Nigerian women, we have to network within the sub-region and the region so that we can exchange experiences, lessons learned, best practices on how to have a very strong movement and network, not alone, independently, woman to woman. We have to bring on board development partners, men, and everybody, because it takes everybody. It's everybody's responsibility to uplift the status of women.
Okay.
Okay,
Good.
so
Okay.
in some African
Okay, Linda,
countries,
you can
in
ask your
some
question.
African countries where women are being marginalized, maybe due to culture, what would be your advice to men? I don't know whether they are threatened by women coming out. Do they see them as competitors instead of people that are coming to complement their efforts in governance? What would be your advice to men?
Yeah, my advice to men is first of all for them to share the knowledge they have of the Holy Quran, of the Bible, because we are governed. The reason why I'm making reference to that, our culture is embedded, is drawn from the misunderstanding or misconception of the holy books. So they must try, women must also try to know what the books say about their empowerment. And they must also try to invest in themselves by even having adult education. Education is never too late. I just told you that I went back to school after 4 children. Women must try to go attend literacy classes, attend entrepreneurship, mobilize the resources they have, so that they can empower themselves and also check around them, see the partners that are around to help them, support them, economic empowerment, social empowerment, and then they can influence. And my appeal is for the people who are in governance, women who are in governance have a responsibility, a moral responsibility to help those who are down, because every woman who is up there in governance and is enjoying should remember that she was put in as a voice for the people who are voiceless. So they must act as a catalyst to support the empowerment of women. Every woman's satisfaction should be looking back and seeing that the woman who is now walking on slippers can walk on nice shoes, can have is decently dressed, and is in a position to in a capacity to empower herself wherever you are. You don't necessarily all have to go to government and work with government. The private sector is the engine for growth, and this is where women are. They are the actors, the economic actors, the economic operators. So we have to look back and help let every woman lift 10 women in her life. And because if you lift 10 women, you divide that, you multiply, that has a multiplier effect. Because the woman has children, and if the father so decides to send the son, because the son is going to carry his name, when the woman is married, is going to Mrs. Ouko or Mrs. Jallo or Mrs. Tambajang, because of the name. They want a son to promote the son so that they carry it, not knowing that women, even from the level of the girls, at the young age, the woman is already trying to be a responsible citizen, trying to use the meager resources they have to make it for the rest of the family. And they should realize that if you educate a woman, you're educating an entire nation. If you educate a man, it's individual because it's not the man that produces the children. Of course, biologically, it takes two to tango, but the main responsibility of raising and caring for children is the woman. So I would ask our traditional leaders to be more inclusive, and I would advise governments to ensure that the traditional laws give special considerations to women. And when you are given special consideration, it has to be both at the welfare, because we are at different levels. Those who are poor must be taken care of through their welfare needs. The other strategic needs, which is working towards mainstreaming gender and their rights in the development process, both planning, at the level of planning programs, at the level of project development, at the level of allocation of the national resources.
All right, so, in Nigeria, women constitute half of the population, and they are seeking for 35% inclusion in politics. But are you comfortable with the 35%, or do you ask for more? Are you comfortable, or is that 35% too small for women to be included in the
I think
politics?
that is the minimum threshold. What we should aspire for is to have 50-50, is to have a balanced development, is to have a sustainable human development. And sustainable human development is dependent on the investment that governments do in developing the capacity of women. Otherwise, that's why in Africa, development is lopsided. That is, it never balanced. If you leave more than half of the population out of the mainstream of development, what do you get? The answer, the dividend, you never have a dividend. But if you invest in more than half of the population, then you see that it has some multiplier evidence, dividend. So it's important that really that we aspire to the 50-50. Look, Rwanda, you look at Rwanda. Rwanda has 64%. And look at Rwanda, how it is going. Nigeria is the big brother. How many million people? Out of that, how many women do you have in decision making? Very minimal. And if it is minimal here, how about the people in the rural areas who don't have the voice to speak out, to articulate their concerns? So we must, as Africans, the only way we can move and we can achieve sustainable human development, peace and prosperity, is to really bring on board the concerns, the priority needs and development needs of women, which is, of course, by extension, the development of the progress of every society and country.
Well, thank you very much for a good delivery this evening. But before we let you go, I personally would like to ask you. I've read a bit about you, and what I have found out, has really made me respect your guts more. Talking about the Gambia, you actually did some phenomenal things there in the politics, in the political arena. What sacrifices, being on, from the experiential point of view, what have you experienced that are challenges that women face in governance? Speaking from your own experience, it's not about what you read now. It's about what you have been through. What would be your advice from that point of view?
I'm a politician by default. When I say that, I came into politics by necessity. My country was going through a hard time, political crisis. For 22 years, we had dictator, and which was characterized by arbitrary execution of people, judicial killings, rape of women, gender-based violence, disappearances, and the seizure of assets of people who really worked hard for all their lives, termination of people in the public and private sector. The private sector was strangulated. There were no regulations to provide a conducive environment for investment in the Gambia, even though Gambia is a resort area, tourist country. And we don't have the resources right now, the natural resources, but we are hoping that someday we'll have explored the natural resources that God has given us. But what we have in the Gambia is the human capital. If you go to many organizations, you find that Gambians are in strategic positions. So I was working with the United Nations for 24 years as an international development practitioner. But when I realized my country was having so much challenges, and I realized that the political parties, which were led by men, were mainly focusing on their political progress, I decided to sacrifice and come back home, leave my job, and come and support the change process. It was not easy in that environment, but I sacrificed, not because I wanted to have a position, but I sacrificed for my country. I regard my country as my agenda, and I was ready to give my life for my country. Fortunately for me, I was able to bring the coalition 7 political parties, 3 independent candidates to enter into coalition, an agreement, and this is the one that ushered the defeat of the dictator. The coalition government won, and that is the present ruling government. And we also ushered the reform agenda, which ranges from constitutional reform, bringing on board the aspirations of women, and hopefully it's now is in progress. We hope that it will take into our voices for 50-50. And we hope it will take it. If it doesn't take it, also we'll continue to champion that cause. And that is not only for elite women, it's going to be rural women. And because even if they are not in the mainstream of education, they understand their language is better. And what they need is just to give them the resources for them to work. We also have judicial reform. We have the truth and reconciliation. We also have economic reforms. These are all opportunities for Gambia today to bring in the concerns of women and young girls. And we are very hopeful that this agenda will be forthcoming in the interest and supreme interest of all citizens of the Gambia. More importantly, I've had a lot of challenges. First of all, everybody was saying, where is she coming from? Can she do it? But I believed in myself. For me, I believe God gave me the mission and I followed my passion. My passion was to support the liberation of my country, and I was up for it and down for it. So I've faced a lot of gender-based some misconception of women in leadership. But the fortunate aspect is that I've worked for my country for many years, and my country loves me and they respect me. Perhaps that is also the edge that I had. So for the other barriers, they are cultural barriers. But having proven myself that women can do equally good in liberating their countries, I was fortunate I succeeded in bringing those. And I always acknowledge the confidence the political leaders had in me. They respected me a lot and they supported me throughout. And up till today, they respect me and they consider me as the mother of the nation. So I humbly accept that name, and I have to continue working hard, supporting my country in every endeavor. And most importantly, I am very humbled to work with the NDI and IRI, because without them, maybe I would not have been here. So I am happy. I will continue to support their agenda, which is their independence, their neutrality in supporting African agenda, including Nigeria. Despite all the challenges we have had, the postponement of the elections, we stayed, and you still see everybody with a smile. So this is the passion that drives us to really support, because supporting Nigeria means supporting the African region internationally. No government that can do it alone. It takes development partners, international cooperation like the NDI and the IRR to support a process like the electoral process. We have gone so many resources. They have invested a lot, the two institutions, a lot in maintaining us here, accommodation, food, working so hard, developing, like the presentation we did today. So many nights we spent, working together. And I'm very proud that despite my being a woman, I was given the leadership, not because I'm the most competent, but because they wanted to give me an opportunity. And giving me the opportunity would also encourage, motivate other women and young girls. And I do hope that this will continue, that other organizations will look up to them, just like the EU has done. Today you see 3 women panelists. So this is the support of international organizations. So I would say thank you to NDI, thank you to IRI, because I came through the window of opportunity of the IRI under the leadership of John. We call him JT because his family name is a little bit difficult to pronounce. But we hope that this partnership will continue.
It will.
We pray that everything goes well for Nigeria. Peace for Nigeria means for Africa, for the international world. Just as Mandela says, peace is never complete until the whole world lives in peace and enjoys peace, because the fundamental rights of people is a must. It's inalienated. It's an inalienation, which means that people are born with their rights, and we should all continue to uphold those rights in different perspectives. Some will go into governance, some will look at electoral reform, some will come into bigger international cooperation in supporting the national development agenda of Nigeria.
Well,
I wish you all the best.
Thank